There's nothing accidental about their play. There's nothing that's been lucky about what the record is. They've been a really strong team in so many different areas.
Welcome to Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets. I've lost track of what episode it is, but that's another thing in itself.
We're getting close to 200.
We've worked so hard to get to almost 200. I know it was 175 a while back, but Tyler Esquivel will be joining me at the beginning part of the podcast going forward. Wherever you are, you have to join me now. So you've signed your name on the dotted line.
Yeah, we're here.
Duties is assigned, so there's no extra pay for this one. Just
okay, cool.
The notoriety that comes with it.
We went into my contract and we added a line. Somebody did.
It's the fine details you did not look into.
Yeah, that's okay. Happy to be here. Love being here. Love doing this with you. It's good.
I like it.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what? Craig Button's on the way. You just heard a clip from him a little bit earlier. I am fascinated right now with the way the Jets are playing, how they are not still in the conversation nationally at this point, and it's become a burr in my saddle as of late.
Okay, I was driving here this morning, and we're recording this on, Tuesday the 9th, and obviously some things in the NHL have gone on. We've got Cutter Gauthier being traded to Anaheim. Nylander signed his contract, and I'm listening to NHL.
Oh, we hear about that all the time.
I'm listening to NHL radio, and I get that the Jets didn't play last night, but just not a mention of it. It's wild to me.
If the Leafs were in first place in the standings right now, we'd hear about it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the national championship happened last night too. So there's a lot going on in the sports world that isn't in Winnipeg. But, man, part of me is like, this is ridiculous. But the other part of me is like, I don't mind it either.
Yeah.
I like flying under the radar. I've been working here for 8 years now.
Yeah.
Always fly under the radar. And I don't know, part of me likes that.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah,
you lived in Toronto, so obviously there's something going on with you.
I don't here's the thing. When I came here 17, 18, I was cool with flying under the radar and how excited everybody was when the Jets got to, moved into first place in the standings or were fighting for first with Nashville all that year. Now it's just this team is so good that it's disappointing to me that they're not part of more conversations outside of the Cole Perfetti, Ryan Hartman incident, which I felt was a little overblown, and they could have moved on from that and talked about how good the Jets are playing on top of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing with the Hartman-Perfetti situation is it resonated with a lot of people because it kind of spoke to a bit of a larger issue in hockey.
100%.
You and I are not going to debate that here.
No, we're not.
But it's a little disappointing, but at the same time, I think in that dressing room, 25 feet away from us, I think they're okay with flying under the radar and keeping it that way. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. Yeah, I would like to, turn on SportsCenter or turn my car radio on and hear them talking about the Jets, but I'm not going to be surprised if they don't.
No, and don't be surprised at all. Locally, though, it's being covered like crazy as it should be. So we'll hear more from Craig Button from TSN a little bit later. He'll talk about the Jets. He'll talk about the World Junior Hockey Championships. The Jets prospects that were there, Rutger McGroarty won gold. Elias Salamonson and Fabian Wagner took silver of course, with Sweden. We got the mailbag coming, the question of the week, which is, what has impressed you the most during the Jets' 12-game point streak? That's going on right now. Maybe it changes, maybe it doesn't by the time this podcast runs on Wednesday, so we're taping this on Tuesday, so keep that in mind. Now, one of the big reasons why I got you here, you were a part of and was around the Mentors trip, which is the dad's trip, grandfathers, uncles, brothers, I think pretty much covers everybody that was on that trip, correct?
There were a couple close friends as well that tagged along on the trip for some players, but it was a really cool trip. So men, when we get together with other men that we don't know, it's very nice to meet you.
A lot of head nods.
Have a sip of my beer, and I'll just enjoy the sporting event that's happening here.
Well, you got to sit in the suites all 3 games, correct?
Well, sitting would not be an accurate representation of what I was doing.
Right.
I was standing. I was working.
You were partaking.
Shooting, although I'm sure every time I ended up on the broadcast,
you were on there a lot.
I wasn't doing anything. My mom was sending me pictures being like, do you even work? Are you just chilling, eating the chips in the back? Which, yes, the chips were very good. When you're in California, the tortilla chips seemingly are always really good.
Yeah, the food looked delicious.
So I had a little couple
Thank you,
snacks.
Chuck Hellebuck.
I had a couple snacks. But anyway, back to my original point. For game 1 in San Jose, everybody's pretty reserved. Nobody really has broken that ice yet with each other. All just oh yeah, Jets win. It's exciting, but everybody's kind of nervous. And you're in a new situation too, and you're just trying to take it all in. Well, they had a bit of a team building activity for the dads on the game day in Friday in Anaheim. And after that, it sort of galvanized the group together because Game 2 in Anaheim, the vibe in the suite was just like, I'm your best friend. You're my best friend.
Did we just become best friends?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were doing karate in the garage. It was great. So everybody was having a great time. So it was just hilarious to see how, whether you're 6 years old on the playground or 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s in a suite at an NHL game, we're all the same.
Yeah.
So it was just funny to see that dynamic. But yeah, it was a great time. Looked like everybody had an awesome time with the team and taking everything in. And I mean, to pull off 3 wins, it's a tough look for the Jets moms.
I was just going to get to that because the mom's trip, which I was on, my mother-in-law came on that one. The Jets did not win a single game on that trip. So I saw a tweet from Neil Pionk's mom, Karen. We're doing just fine.
I saw that as well.
Yeah, we're doing just fine. So as I mentioned that, we'll get more on the mentors trip. I asked Neil Pionk before the Jets left on this trip, what's the biggest differences between having the moms on the trip and then the dads / grandfathers, friends, uncles. Here's the answer.
Well, when you lose and your mom's there, it's okay, honey, it's gonna be all right. And when you lose and your dad's got an idea how to fix it, right? So it's no, it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I did a dad's trip in New York and then the mom's trip a few years ago in Winnipeg, so we're excited for it.
So I found that answer very funny because I saw a lot of that. The moms were just so excited. They're always positive the whole time, no matter what. Even when they're going to that last game, they hadn't won a game yet. Moms were really upbeat the whole time. So when it was 2-0. They go into Arizona, the golf trip.
Yep.
They went out and played golf on the Saturday, the day off. Just what was the vibe like heading into that final game against Arizona? You've already won 2 games. You probably felt pretty good. Everybody feeling pretty good about themselves.
Yeah, the vibe going into that one, I would say pretty positive, but cautiously optimistic because I think they all knew that there was a pretty cool opportunity to do something special heading into that game. And I mean, looking back on it, like, you never take an opponent for granted, but I mean, you're playing Arizona. You've had a really good record up until now. Like, you're in first place in the NHL. You should beat that team.
Yes.
And they go out and they do just that. The golf day galvanized the group even more. I really think everybody had fun. Just a point on Neil Pionk and how he said there's going to have like 30 coaches.
Yes.
His dad is the ultimate coach. Like, I was shooting all the dads, just watching the game or whatever. And Neil's dad, and I talked to Neil about this. Like, he's sitting there, across him. He's muttering things to himself. And
what he's going to bring up with Neil afterwards.
It was I'm like, wow, he is a coach, like, through and through. And he runs hockey camps back in Duluth and Hermantown in the summertime. But I don't know. So it was just very funny that he made that quote, and then that he was right when he came, at least his own father. So.
He was basically talking about his own dad, but just trying to encompass everybody together in that category.
Exactly,
we did talk about Arizona. I kind of jumped a little bit. One of the best parts was in Anaheim, Nate Schmidt.
Yeah.
Like, we had he had talked about it not scoring his first goal. And, he scores in Anaheim, and it was a huge goal. It was a game winner. The best part about this is how he goes through it. And you knew it would be a great answer afterwards. So here's Nate Schmidt's comment about his first goal of the season, which came in Anaheim.
I think I was yelling at Sandberg for half a zone. You get a little scared when all of a sudden you see your D partner leading the rush and you're the next one up. But, I think he makes a great play at the blue line, allows that play to happen. Fetz was giving me a little grief for looking him off, but you know what? I think redemption came his way about 5 minutes later. But it feels good to feel like you finally got especially with all the first 2 periods went, I felt like it was just a slow game for Sammy and I. We weren't really in a clicking, and it just was, puck was going everywhere. It wasn't really like a clean start for us, but I thought we had a really good third period, and it feels good to get that one.
So they've got these points 10 in 12 straight games as of we tape this podcast on Tuesday morning. A big part of this all relies on Connor Hellebuck. I don't know what else he can do. He's third star of the month, got named to the All-Star game, and was third star of the week, which was named on Monday. I think it's funny. I saw something on TSN the other day. They're talking about Thatcher Demko and Connor Hellebuck, who's the better goaltender in Canada right now. And, Thatcher Demko gets brought up because he is a lot busier.
Oh, for sure.
A lot busier than what Connor Hellebuck is. But I think of the game in Arizona. The game, it's 2-1, And Hellebuck makes that huge stop in the second period. And then a little bit later, it's when Cole Perfetti made it 3-1. So before that, it could have been 2-2, but Hellebuck, who was not busy at all, I think it was about 6 or 7 shots at that point, but he makes a huge stop. And Rick Bowness has been talking about this over and over again. Timely saves, timely goals. What Connor Hellebuck has provided this year is that timely save over and over and over again. And therefore, I think he has to be the front runner for the Vezina Trophy, the Hellebuck for the Vezina Trophy at this point. Way too early to get into it, but the way he has played and the consistency he has brought this year, phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I mean,
yeah,
pretty much
that's
said
the weird
everything
part
there.
about him.
Like, he's just so solid.
Yeah.
And you bring up the phrase "timely save." I'm in the room after wins shooting coach's speech and the jacket presentation. Like literally every time Bones comes into the room, he goes up to either one of the goalies because they both been playing great. He'll timely saves, timely saves. So, yeah, that is a phrase that he uses. So I know some people don't like that phrase, but it's
accurate.
It's accurate. It makes sense. Like, get off your horse. But, he's just been so consistent. And obviously the Jets' defensive structure has just been far and away better than it's been in past years. And I think that's provided him some relief. And obviously this run of, 29 games, 28 games without a three or fewer goals, like,
it's ridiculous.
That's incredible. Like, really, when you extrapolate it over the course of time.
So why are they not part of the national conversation? Like, there's just so many things going on here, and we won't get into this because we've already touched on it a little bit. Because I want to get to the mailbag and of course Craig Button. But it's crazy to me what is going on here and how well they're playing that it's just not there. So we're not going to get into that. Yeah. Anyways, mailbag. The question I asked a lot of people on Twitter was, or not a lot of people, just on my Twitter page was, what has impressed you the most about the Jets during this 12-game point streak? They're 10-0-2. So, do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
You go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's your podcast,
which you are now part of.
Apparently.
Yeah. We'll go into that a little bit later. To me, before we came on and we started this, to me right now, their power play has been criticized over and over and over again because I felt now it's like you're almost being nitpicky. You're trying to find something what's wrong. What's the crack in the armor? So the fact that their power play, which was a lot better on the road in those than that 3-game road trip, they're winning despite that. That's the part of it, right? The 5-on-5 play has been so consistent and so stunningly good that they've won despite their power play not being at its best. And you look at who's on the power play, and you're like, how can they not be scoring more? Yeah. That's the part to me that has impressed me the most, not only just during this 12-game point streak, but the whole season. So before we get to the mailbag, what has impressed you the most during the 12-game point streak?
Yeah, I think it's just the 5-on-5 play and the defensive structure. So obviously the 5-on-5 play has been talked about at large. You know, they just seem to create so much when they're evenly matched out on the ice, which is, the majority of the game. I mean, you talk about the power play struggles. Sure, like you want that to succeed, but you're looking at maybe 8 minutes of the game where you're at a man advantage. Like, you want to be able to supplement your 5-on-5, but I think the 5-on-5 play has bought them the time and room to really work at that PP. And if you can go into March and April with a solid power play, I think you set yourself up for the playoffs. I mean, you don't win the Stanley Cup in October, November, December, but you can definitely take yourself out of that running. The Jets have kept themselves in that running. And then the second part of that is the defensive play. I think it's just so impressive when they're in their own zone that when one guy makes a move, the 4 guys on the ice are making a corresponding move to fill in the gaps, and it just never seems like the other team has much going. I think a lot of the times in previous years, you're sort of hanging onto your belt a little bit like, oh boy, here we go. And it just doesn't seem to happen. There was like one shift in Arizona the other night where the Jets were hemmed in their own zone, but like the other team's good too. So it's going to happen, but it just feels like every time that there's just never a defensive breakdown, and it's going to happen from time to time. And that's
what Neil Pionk said. Whenever they break down, Bucky's there.
Yeah. So
and now LB, of course.
So consistent and so impressive to watch. So that's what impressed me most over this 12 games.
All right, to the mailbag it is. Ezzy Ginsburg, of course, friend of the show. His most impressive part is Chuck Hellebuck. That, of course, is Connor Hellebuck's dad. Put on a great performance during the road trip. Brad Lambert Fan Club says the consistency in play all year round has been second to none. Blitzy, or official, or BLLZY. Is that ballsy, Billsy?
I don't know. Let's see.
Let's take a look at that.
Blizzy.
Blizzy. Okay,
It's like
thank
a
you.
glizzy, but with a
That's
B.
what happens when you don't have your glasses on. Their tenacity. Alex Howe. Contributions from up and down the lineup. It's not just one line or one D pair leading the charge offensively. And finally, Darren Walker. The fact that they've got forwards that are willing to stand in front of the other team's net, screen the goalie, and get the rebounds. We haven't had a Jets team be this gritty, scoring 2-foot goals since the days of Paul McLean.
Paul McLean. He was the one with the mustache.
That's right. That's all you need to know. Anyways, thanks so much for writing into the mailbag. If you ever want any other comments, ask us at groundcontrol@winnipegjets.com. And, of course, contact me on Twitter. The schedule coming up this week, Jets playing Columbus as the day that we are taping this podcast. Chicago is also here without Connor Bedard. And then last but not least, on Saturday, it is the Philadelphia Flyers in town. So it's a interesting homestand for the first 3 games. 2 of the teams on this homestand not in the playoff situation. So we'll see how this all pans out. Moving on to the play of the week, and after the play of the week, Craig Button. I do get to ask Craig why the Jets are not getting more national attention, and of course about the Jets prospects of the World Juniors, and he got to work in the same booth as Dennis Beyak in Dennis's final broadcast. So we'll go over that. And Craig got emotional, so we'll talk about that coming up after this. But in the play of the week, there's a lot going on this road trip. And we just talked about the power play. How about the tap-in goal on the pass for Nikolai Ehlers across to Gabe Vilardi in San Jose? Impressive to say the least. But if you don't believe me, here's the play of the week.
Jets doing everything except taking the lead on this power play. Morrissey to Shifley. Again, it's Nikolai Ehlers. Vilardi scores! Gabe Vilardi from about a foot away from the goal line, and Winnipeg leads it for the first time.
This is all about the pass from Nikolai Ehlers.
Hi, I'm Connor Hellebuck,
Jordan Kyrou right in, stopped by Hellebuck.
and this is the Ground Control Podcast.
He is TSN analyst / scout. He is Craig Button. Pleased to have him on the podcast here this afternoon. Craig, how are you? And how is the travel back from the World Juniors?
The travel back is really good. I mean, I had some tight connections, but everything was on time. And you get back in and settled in. I hate telling anybody this, Jamie. I never have a problem sleeping when I'm over there, and I never have a problem adjusting back. And, all natural. I don't do anything other than just kind of get myself on the schedule as quick as I can. I know a lot of people have struggles, but I get acclimated very quickly.
Do people get upset when you tell them stories about how easy of a time you have with, your sleep schedule?
I don't tell them when it's happening. I just go, yeah, me too. I didn't sleep good last night. Yeah, I'm struggling. It's in moments like this that I can tell you that. But when people are struggling with acclimating to time changes each way, I'm not ready to tell anybody that I'm doing just fine.
Listen, you had a great tournament. You got one of the special moments that you had in Sweden was working with Dennis Beyak in his final broadcast. What has it been like working with Dennis over the years, and what was it like doing that final broadcast with him?
Well, I mean, working with Dennis, and if anybody says anything negative about working with Dennis, question that person, because Dennis is wonderful to work with. He's wonderful to spend time with. He's a friend to so many, and I think we all feel really comfortable when we're with Dennis, because Dennis makes us feel comfortable. He's a brilliant broadcaster. I've had an opportunity to do almost 200 broadcasts with Dennis. So that familiarity where, the hand fits into the glove for me, it's perfect and whatnot. Now, I mean, I knew, and I mean, a lot of us knew that this was Dennis's last broadcast, and Laura Dykin, who does such a brilliant job hosting the panels on TSN, she sent me a note that morning. She goes, if you don't hold it together, she says, I'm going to lose it. I said, Laura, I have no chance. And of course, you can rehearse it, but Dennis is the type of person that it's so warm and comfortable to be around him. And then when you start to speak about him in the manner and the way that he's impacted all of us in such a positive way, it's hard not to be emotional, and I'm an emotional person. So, nobody was surprised that I did. Laura, she only had the introduction and then she was able to get out. She said if she had to talk any longer, she said it wouldn't have been a pretty sight. But I think it's always a pretty sight when you can honor Dennis and honor somebody of his stature. And certainly I felt that honor. I felt very privileged to be able to be with him on his last broadcast and to pay tribute to him, because it's not me paying tribute to him. I was paying tribute to him on behalf of everybody that's worked with him.
Yeah, and you felt that as watching it. It felt very organic, especially when you got emotional. And then I saw Laura trying to keep it together. The best part in all of this, Craig, is that Dennis didn't get emotional. He was the one keeping it together. That was the best part. How was that?
Well, I mean, I think that speaks volumes about Dennis. The game when he's broadcasting it can go sideways, it can get topsy-turvy and upside down, and Dennis keeps it right on the rails. So, that's one of the benefits of working alongside Dennis. I talked about Shane Knighty, who started working with Dennis, and then Kevin Sawyer, and certainly myself. I mean, when you talk about rank amateurs and being neophytes, I mean that's what we all were. And Dennis was patient with us, and not just us, with anybody he's worked with. And I think that, you become so appreciative of that type of person. And what Dennis teaches you is not only important in terms of the broadcast, but he also teaches you it's important with dealing with people. And we all do our best to pay it forward. And that, again, is because of Dennis.
Okay, so you were there to cover a tournament. It was a great World Juniors, great job by the hosts of Sweden. But just how dominant were the Americans from start to finish that tournament, Craig?
Well, I mean, they were really good. David Carl, the coach, said that this was about building from game one. He even went all the way back to the pre-tournament games, and he said how important it was to play those games and to build your team. And certainly they had their scare in their semifinal game. Sweden had their scare in the quarterfinal game. The two best teams played in the gold medal game. And, when you break it down and certainly, you can look at different areas of the team. Once the U.S. scored the third goal to make it 3-1, I'm standing there and I'm going, Sweden needs 3 more goals on Trey Augustine. And I said, not happening. And even though Sweden scored at the end of that second period and made it a 3-2 game, and there was some energy in the building, you just didn't feel that the U.S. was going to cede control. And they didn't, and they widened their lead and certainly took control of the tournament. The best team won. And Sweden was a good team that played right there with them. But when you get to that point in the tournament, and David Carl pointed this out at the outset, what you want to do is be at your strongest at the end. The U.S. were exactly that.
Was Rutger McGroarty at his best in that final game?
Here's the thing, what I would say to you, Jamie, about Rutger.
Yeah.
Rutger is a 100% all-in competitor. He had missed so much time leading into the World Junior Tournament, and he was trying to find his way at the beginning. But he was in the mix. He was always going to give you 100% effort and the competitive fire that he brings every single shift. And as the tournament went on, you could clearly see him, getting his legs underneath him, getting his stamina, getting his hands in there. But what I would say about Rutger, he's the unquestioned leader of that group, of that all-four group, unquestioned. And it's not just what Rutger gives you on the ice; it's what he gives you everywhere. And the way that he's so supportive of the plays on the ice and the individuals off the ice. And I've had the luxury of watching him for 4 years, and I'm beyond impressed. And you think you become so impressed, and then he shows you even more to be impressed about. I know this when I talk about what he gives a team on the ice. What he gives the team off the ice is every bit as critical. And the way he is supportive of his teammates, the way that he sets an example in every single regard, it's just phenomenal. He's a special person. He's a terrific player, a hard-nosed player, a competitive player, but he's a special person.
Yeah, in the short time he's a Winnipeg Jets, the fans are really taking a liking to him. Two other prospects in this tournament, Elias Salamonson and Fabian Wagner. I know Wagner didn't get a lot of ice time, Craig, but let's go with Elias Salamonson. And through the suspension through the first game, got knocked out of the first game and then suspended for the second one. But as his tournament went along, what did you think of him?
I think that Salamonson has really taken his game up levels. I think part of the challenge, Jamie, with young players is the players getting comfortable with being who they are. You know, you get into your draft year and you want to show that, hey, I can do this and I can do that. But every player has their own, what I would call, set of attributes that they're going to have to hang their hat on as prospects and try to get to the NHL. And I think that Salamonson has absolutely been able to do that. He's physical, he's rugged, he's competitive. He understands, I just got to move the puck. If I'm playing with good forwards, and I just got to get to the puck and move the puck. But he's territorial. He plays with edge. He plays with that competitive spirit that says, you want to try to beat me, you're going to have to give everything you have. He shrinks the ice, makes life very difficult for opponents. Those types of defensemen, I think, are so important to successful teams. And I certainly see a player that has NHL written all over him. And is it going to be immediate? No, he's going to need a little bit of time to develop the qualities, the strength, the physical maturity. But his game is really, really strong. And certainly what you look for in players to add different elements to a successful group.
And it paired really nicely with Axel Sandin-Pellikka, didn't he?
He did, and even he gives you the benefit to move players around. You know, they were able to play him with Havlat for a little bit of a stretch, and he can support Havlat, who's a very skilled defenseman, and that's something you like to see in a player. How does he work in that, what I call partner play? How does he support different types of players? And you know, it's one thing to say you can play in these situations, but he gives strength to a defensive pair, no matter who you are. And I think that's really important as well.
All right, so we just talked about the big chunk of the future of the Winnipeg Jets. Let's talk about the current Winnipeg Jets. And I know you've been overseas, but clearly you're up to speed on what they're doing right now. 10-0-2 in their last 12 games, their first overall in the National Hockey League. What more can you say about this team? And Craig, how much more do the Jets have to do to kind of get some more national recognition, in your opinion?
Can I answer the second question first, Jamie?
Yes. Yeah, I would love that.
National recognition it's amazing. People, oh, wow, you see the Winnipeg Jets? Yeah, I see them regularly. And, you know, the NHL has 32 teams and Canada has 7 teams. And it's almost like certain teams get lost in the mix. And I guess that's just part and parcel of our big country and Toronto-centric. And I don't say Toronto-centric in a negative way.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, certain markets have to just continue to show, hey, we're worthy of attention. Certainly the Winnipeg Jets have done that. And listen, when you play as well as the Winnipeg Jets have, you're going to get the national attention. And I think that their play there's nothing accidental about their play. There's nothing that's been lucky about what the record is. They've been a really strong team in so many different areas. And Jamie, I keep going back to what Adam Lowry said at the beginning of the season. He said, we know how good Pierre-Luc Dubois is, and the 3 players we got from LA probably individually aren't as good as Pierre-Luc, but we're a better team with those 3 players. You think about the speed, the size, the depth in their lineup. I also think with Kevin Cheveldayoff, a couple of under-the-radar moves that need to be mentioned is the acquisition of Niederreiter and Nemesnikov last year. You're looking at such a deep forward group. The defense has been good. We know how great Connor Hellebuck is, but this is a really hard team to play against. They're big, they're fast, they're skilled, and they have all the different elements that make them really hard to play against and can give them a lot of success. So, if they get their power play working a little bit better, if they get their penalty killing working a little bit better, they don't take penalties. That's a really disciplined team. So all those other areas of special teams, once those get a little bit improved, a little bit better, how much better will the Winnipeg Jets be? I mean, there's no place higher to go than 1, but I think what they're trying to do now is try to solidify themselves for being a really hard team to play against in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and one that can go deep and contend.
Hey, I told you 10 minutes. We took you to 11. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome back to North America, and we look forward to seeing you the next time you're in town.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. Always a pleasure to join you.
Many thanks to Craig Button for coming on the show. Busy man as he always is, and is always so kind with his time. You got to see the Dennis Beyak in Arizona. So Dennis does the World Juniors, doesn't go back to Kelowna where he lives. His winter home is in Arizona. So take us through that conversation before we get out of here.
Yeah, it was a quick stop at the bar, because where else would it be? Dennis.
Did he come in the room after the game?
He did, yeah. And, that was actually – so in the room I was shooting scrums, but just out of the corner of my eye, Dennis was in there, because you can hear that iconic voice. And just player after player, like, Dennis, like, hey, how are you? And catching up. So it was really great to see him, and it was great to see him get the adoration and recognition for an amazing career.
Yeah.
Still the same old Dennis with fantastic
dad jokes.
Yeah, dad jokes, and appropriate for the mentors trip. But
yeah.
It was great to see Dennis. We had a great dinner with him on, what was that, Saturday night? So in Arizona, awesome to see him, and we wish him and his wife Bev all the best in their next chapter of life here. So
thank you so much for taking us through it. Thank you so much for your time here. On behalf of Tyler Esquivel, of course, Craig Button, I'm Jamie Thomas. Thanks so much for watching/listening to Ground Control, the official podcast of the Winnipeg Jets. We'll see you next week.